welcome to the Traveling Designer Podcast. This is episode 1. My name is Rick Oberreiter, and I will be your host. I have to admit, I'm very excited and a little nervous as well. I've never heard myself talk for this long, and I'm always not quite sure what's going to come out of my mouth, so bear with me. I want to be as spontaneous in my thoughts as possible, so we'll kind of see how this kind of goes as we start to do a couple of these and see how the flow is. Well, I want to thank everybody for finding the podcast and taking a listen. I hope you can find an audience and keep this thing going for a while. And I appreciate everyone taking some time. I know it's not easy to find time in your day to do things, so to take your time to listen to this, I appreciate it. I thought I would start use episode 1 as just a basic introduction, talk a little bit about myself, introduce myself, kind of talk about how I got here, why I decided to do a podcast, and where I like the podcast to go. So as hence the name of the podcast, The Traveling Designer, I'm a full-time graphic designer and a full-time traveler. I started traveling in my 27-foot camper with my dog Mazzy in June of 2016. And I've also been self-employed for over 10 years now. I started my business, The Originality Design, I believe in August of 2006. So it's been a long time now. So, and it's been a dream of mine to work for myself, make my own schedule, and, travel too. So the last couple of years have been a pretty grand adventure for me. So a little bit about myself. I'm born in the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa. I moved to Denver, Colorado in 1999 to go to art school. I always kind of knew I wanted to move to the West. I used to take a lot of family trips, like family trips with my parents, out to Rocky Mountain National Park, and we would go all the way to Wyoming, the Tetons, and Yellowstone. So I knew when I got old enough that the mountains and the outdoors was something that was always important to me. So I came out and went to school in the hopes of finding a job. People always say that so much of life is about timing. I graduated a little bit after 9/11, so the job market was pretty bad. It was kind of the end of the .com boom too. So being like a designer in the art world, it was very difficult as well. So I did get lucky enough to find a job pretty quickly out of school working for a website. Unfortunately, that didn't last too long before I got laid off. Like I say, some of the timing on that one wasn't too well either. And after that, I had all kinds of odd jobs. I actually went back to working as a server and setting up banquet rooms, something I did when I was in art school. I went back to that for a while because I couldn't find a job. I also had a job working part-time in the classified section of a Mexican newspaper, which was interesting. And then I also worked for a sign company, which I learned a lot. It was a small business, a family-owned business, a lot of things going on there. And then I got a really good job too, working for a marketing company. It was the first time I had a chance to work with other designers and have like a team. So that was cool too. Probably about a year into that job, I kind of saw like things were going a little sideways, and I kind of knew I needed to get out. I was always doing freelance and stuff on the side. So I had a client I was working with. He was producing a magazine. So I decided to quit the job and go work, at least have him be like my first client. Like I said, I kind of saw things going a little strange. My art director, he was a great designer, but I really didn't think he liked being a director. So I kind of saw things going haywire there. And I think it was a few months after I left, I got hired the same time as someone else. And if I remember the story correctly, he went into work one Friday and went to check his email like he does every day, and his email wasn't working. So he went to the IT department to ask what was going on, and they said he should go talk to the art director, and just like that, he was out of a job. So, at least I kind of wanted to control my own destiny in that respect. Come to find out, the first client I worked for, it was an epic failure, but I learned a lot from it. You kind of learn and start to do what you got to do. After that, I was doing a lot of work working for other agencies. I'd go into places when someone was sick or on vacation. And then I just started gaining my own clientele, and eventually kind of had my own clients and was able to start to work with some cool people. So, so that was like the first push I got that kind of got me working on my own. It was something that I always wanted to do. A couple years after having my own company, I was living in a pretty cool back house. I was still in Denver, Colorado. I was in a cool part of town, and one day I was doing laundry, and the owner of the property was there fixing something, and he mentioned to me that he hasn't paid his mortgage in a few months, and that he suggested that I stop paying rent because eventually the bank was going to take over the house. So that was interesting as well. I always remember, like, I'd park in the alley, and I would always open the door nice and slow to see if the big red sticker was on my front door. And a couple months later, coming back from a hike, I imagine I finally opened up, the door from the alley, and the red sticker was there. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do then, and this was, I guess, kind of my second push. This was the first time I had the chance to. I decided to go back to Iowa and reconnect with some friends and family. My sister and my parents, they were already gone by then, but it was like my first time of like, all right, I'm gonna do a little bit of traveling and still work and see how that goes. I've never really left for all that long, even though I always, I never really met with my clients a lot, but it was like a security level thing of me being close to them, and they knew I was close and so forth. So it was the first time I had a chance to kind of go out and see how it was to be on the road a little bit away from where my clients were and work. When I came back to Denver, I didn't really want to be there. I think being in Iowa and having the clean air and the lack of traffic, coming back in Denver was a bit too much for me. So I moved up into the mountains. I lived in a cabin for 6 months, and all I did was work and hike. That's basically all it was. It was amazing. It was such a fun adventure. And then as soon as the first snow came, I was out of there. And then I moved down to Boulder, Colorado. And that's where I was for the last 6 years before I left. And I feel like I could do an entire episode on Boulder and its politics and its perception and its reality, so maybe sometime we'll talk a little bit about that. But, I was there for 6 years. It was a long time. And it was, for the most part, the people there, I made some great friends, and that's kind of how I started my niche with my graphic design business. And I was, working with eco and sustainable companies, and a lot of those clients I still have. And so I had a chance to work with them. I had a chance to ingrain myself in the community, and I helped out with some networking events and did some things like that. So it was a good experience. But after, a few years, I think I started to get that itch again to do something different. Every October, I would go to San Francisco to the Harley Strictly Bluegrass Festival. And if you haven't heard of that, I suggest you pause this really quick and Google it. If you're a music lover, it's amazing. It's a free festival in the park, and I've been there, I think, like 10 times now over the years. So I went to San Francisco like I do every October, came back. I think I kind of knew there was some change in the air. Like, I came back and cut my hair all off. I think I had long hair for like 12 years, cut it all off, and really started thinking about the whole travel thing. There was, something about routine that I always had a problem with. I think a lot of people do. We get in this sense of routine, and, it's a killer. You just can't get out of it. And even though I think I did a decent job, I would take, the middle of the week off and go hiking and so forth. There was something about, I think human nature always takes us back into a routine, no matter how much we fight it off, so it was something I was fighting, and I knew I needed to leave. I didn't know where I wanted to go. So I really started to do my research and saying, all right, well, maybe this is something, I can do. I've always kind of had that daydream of traveling in a camper. So, I started looking into the RV industry, and it's not like I was totally new. My parents and my dad later in his career, he was an RV tech, and then he got into making RV awnings and started a business about the same time I started mine. A lot more successful than mine is, but our family business is called Tough Top Awnings, and I've been helping out with design and marketing since day one. So it's been a long time. So I was familiar with kind of the RV world and the travel world. But as I started doing my research, there was two places I first started looking. One of them was a friend of the company's called the RV Geeks. If you have not heard of them, you should definitely look them up. They're amazing. They do how-to videos about everything you need to know about RVing. And I think I just read that, I think I even posted this on our Tough Tops Facebook page, that they have the biggest audience on YouTube than anybody in the RV space. So congratulations to that. So there's so much good information. And the other people that I checked out a lot was Gone with the Winds, and they're a young traveling couple. I think actually now they're sailing. They're not doing the RVing anymore, but they have all kinds of cool videos about solar to compost toilets to cool places to camp, all kinds of stuff. So then I started all right, kind of seeing what I was up against, and by the time Christmas came around, I was already on Craigslist, looking at campers and such, and I was visiting my parents down in Arizona, and I quickly realized that I could get so much more value buying a camper in Arizona than I could in Colorado. So I mentioned it to my dad, and he has 10 times more expertise than me. So he started helping me out and looking, and I think by the end of that January, I had a camper bought. By March, I was out back in Arizona to do some work on it and put in the solar panels, drive it back to Colorado. And then by June, I was on the road. So that was a kind of a quick turnaround of like deciding I wanted to do something and, making it happen. Since that time, I've been spending most of my time in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington, California. Kind of one of my mantras is my only plan is not to have one, but the one plan I did have is I wanted to travel the 101. So from that first August all the way till Christmas time, I just made the 101 my home, and it was the most amazing experience. And I'll probably through the other episodes, we'll talk about that more and more. And I'm currently in Bend, Oregon. So I've been here actually since November. It's been by far the longest time I've been in one spot. But after traveling last winter, I kind of realized that I wanted to be in one area for the winter. And I have my dog, Mazzy. She's getting a little bit older, and she's got some husky in her, and she's definitely a mountain dog and loves the mountains and the trees a lot more than the heat and the ocean and the beach. So I kind of wanted to give her a winter. So, after visiting Bend a couple of times, I thought this would be a good place to call home for a while. So it's actually kind of another exciting thing is I'm getting ready to leave here in like a week. So there's a lot, fun of adventures coming up that I won't get into right now, but we'll definitely talk about later on. So I think there you have it. That was like a quick kind of caught up on kind of my journey through how I got to talking to you right now. So why did I decide to do a podcast? First off, I just wanted to see if I could do it. I'm a very kind of introverted artist, and I think being a solo traveler, I feel like I have a lot of inner dialogue. So I was a little curious to see how that sounds when I kind of get it out of my head and see how it sounds in voice form. If you're a traveler or looking to travel or anything like that, you probably know there's no shortage of information out there. Everybody has a blog or a YouTube channel or Instagram account or a Facebook group or a page or whatever, which I think is awesome. I think we all have a unique perspective on life, and we all see things a little bit different. So we all have something that we can offer. And I have to admit that I went into podcasting a little blind, which I kind of think I did on purpose, just to kind of dive in and, so I don't really know what's out there. I don't, even know how, everybody always does it, so hopefully kind of this rambling, talking, amateurish way that I'm going to do things initially, hopefully it resonates with some people. I'm just here just trying to talk. It's not going to be overly scripted or anything like that, but going back to some of the other things, I'm all across the social media, and I do have a blog as well, but, you know, I kind of wanted to challenge myself with this and to try to get myself out of my comfort zone a little bit. And, you know, I did some other things. I tried doing some videos, really wasn't my thing. And I will post blog posts here and there. I much rather, you know, tell my story through like photos and, you know, short blog posts than I do with writing out a lot of stuff. So I think this is more conducive, and I really love the idea of storytelling, you know, so I hope I have the chance to share some of the stories out there of some of the people listening, and, you know, not just my own. You know, a couple of mantras that I've had since I've been traveling is, you know, it's always better to be doing things than not doing things. And the other one too is, like I said before, is getting myself out of my comfort zone. You know, so I think touching on the first one, you know, it's always easy not to go out and do something, you know, to make an excuse, you know, not to go on a hike or not to go on a trip or whatever, and kind of stay in the confinement of your comfort space, you know. So hopefully, like, talking about getting out there will, you know, get some people out of their comfort zones to get out and do some things, you know. These days, you know, one of the things that really gets my adrenaline going the most is, you know, traveling down a road I've never been on, or going to a place I've never been before. You know, it's something about that just is really exciting, you know, and even the whole fact of saying, all right, I'm going to go to a new place and, you know, be social and have like interactions with people, that all that's going to come from strangers. You know, it's not too long ago that would be like a super frightening experience, and you know, it still is, you know, sometimes to do that, but you know, it's you kind of force yourself to go out if you want to, you know, be social. Like, obviously, you know, you're going to a place you know nobody, you know, the whole thing I always say is like, well, what's the worst thing that can happen is you know, you say something stupid and they won't see you the next day, right? But I think it's, you know, but as I've traveled, I've realized like how much that part of it, the unknown, has been such a cool and fun thing. So another thing too that I hope to get out of this is, you know, to inspire others, you know, not just doing what I'm doing. Like, even though I think everybody should, you know, travel like this, at least for a month, you know, to travel in a, you know, as a camper, or, you know, do the whole van life thing. And you know, it's something you really learn a lot about yourself, and you definitely learn, you know, a different way, you know, to live, you know. So I think it's something that I would recommend someone doing, or people doing anyway. You know, I've actually inspired a few friends to get on the road. I have one friend who is traveling, a couple other people who have talked about it or doing it in one form or another. And I also had another friend contact me. He's married and got 2 kids. And I was thinking about, him and his wife were thinking about taking their kids on the road for, you know, at least a year. And, you know, he called to kind of get some advice. And, you know, the one thing that he says I remember, and excuse my language, is like, he said, I just don't want to fuck up my kids, you know. And, you know, I was like, well, you know, regardless, you know, I think you're providing your kids with this amazing opportunity, and, you know, stories that, you know, that they'll be able to tell forever, you know, to get this unique perspective on the world. And I always say this to anybody who wants to do something is, you know, what's the worst thing you can do? What's the worst that can happen is you just go back, you know. No one tell you, you know, you can't try it. And if it doesn't work, that you can't go back, you know, to where you were before. You know, it's an easy thing to do. You know, when I first started, I told myself I was going to do it from June until October, and then kind of reevaluate myself. And obviously I haven't looked back. You know, another thing that I think would be interesting to talk about is just that whole idea of like being happy and what that means. You know, I think, you know, I've definitely learned that I feel like what makes me happy might be a little bit different than I guess what the norm is, you know, I guess, you know, I don't want to step on any toes and give any examples, because there's really not a right or wrong there, but, you know, it's hard to make a change in your life, or to, you know, do something that's out of the norm. You know, if it's moving to a new city when you're a little bit older, or getting a new job, or, you know, even if it's, you know, if you're not used to it, going to a place and grabbing a beer by yourself and doing those kinds of things, you know, and it makes it even harder, you know, when you think it's a little bit out of the ordinary. You know, I think it's, even though we should not let others affect how we make our own decisions, you know, but I think it is a thing where we always want to, you know, please the people that, we care about and care about us. So, there's always that perception, even though that perception shouldn't really matter all that much, it still holds a lot of weight. So it's hard to make some of those changes and to do something that you ultimately know is best for you and is what's going to make you happy. So hopefully, just by talking about some of this stuff, it might give people that push that they might need to get out and do something. So, so I'm losing my train of thought. Sorry about that. And the last thing I want to talk about, and I guess for this topic, is, a lot of people talk about, signs, the signs of, trying to find signs to do something or to not do something. It makes a big difference in how decisions are made. And, the first day that I left, I left Boulder and I'm on the road and I'm 2 hours into my trip and I'm getting outside Colorado Springs, which isn't all that far from Boulder at all if you don't know that area too well. And I lost power in my camper. I was able to get off to the side of the road and called up a tow truck, and I'm trying to call places to look at it. And the tow truck shows up an hour and a half later, and we have no place to take it. And he finally found a friend to take the RV to. And by that time it started back up. So we go over to his place, start talking about it, and he obviously had no time to look at it either, but we kind of figured out what we thought we knew what it was. So we took it over to his shop, over to the tow truck shop, and he put in a new fuel pump, and I was on the road again, camped out that night, leaving the next day, and I'm on the road getting ready to go up this big summit. Same thing happens again, and I'm on the side of the road again. It's like, you got to be kidding me. And, I'm just calling ahead because in my head, I was like, all right, I know it's going to start again. So maybe if I can get to the next town over, I can have someone look at it again. And, no one can look at it. Everyone's 2 months out. And by that time, a truck coming from the other direction pulls over on the other side of the highway. And, he's trying to say something to me. Couldn't understand a word he was saying. So I hopped across the busy highway and he was asking me if I need help. And I was kind of telling him my story. And he was like, yeah, you don't want to go straight because that's a 12,000 foot peak. And, you'll be dead trying to get up there. You'll never make it. So he pulled himself around and he had a truck and a flatbed, hooked up my 27-foot camper, got us turned around, and we had about 3 miles to go on the highway, and then like another 3 miles to this little town. And he, we kind of used gravity. He pushed me and pushed and pulled me all the way into this town. And somewhere in between there, when we were talking, we had to get out a couple of times and hook and unhook. I was just asking him where he was off to, and he was there with his sister, and his sister was helping like direct traffic and stuff. And they were on their way to the hospital because she wasn't feeling well. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, why are you helping me? And, he just said, you look like you were in need. And I will never forget that. And he got ourselves into this little town called Lavos, Colorado. And even really before I had a chance to fully thank him, I went over and thanked him and everything that I could. And, obviously he was off. He needed to get his sister to the hospital. But I thought that was the nicest thing ever. So I get into this town and the place was able to look at my camper with, that day to kind of diagnose it and everything. And, so the first night I stayed in the parking lot of the place I was going to fix it. And, being an optimist that I am, they knew what it was. It was actually the fuel pump inside of the fuel tank. There's 2 fuel pumps. So, I thought, it would be done pretty quickly. So that next day I walked over to an RV park to see if they had any spots. Cause I was like, well, by the end of the day, it'll be done. I'll drive it over, stay the night and leave the next day. Didn't really work out that way. The part took a while to get there. I ended up being there for, I think, 3 or 4 days. And I went back to the RV park just to tell the owner that I wouldn't be needing the spot and that, my camper wouldn't be ready. And the woman's just like, you have a tent? I'm like, yeah, of course. She's like, to go get your tent and whatever you need, and I will give you a free spot to go and take a shower and do what you have to do. And she was so nice. And went over there, took a shower, and was able to talk to everybody there. And it was just amazing, So for the next 3 days, I hung out at the coffee shop and had some of the best lunch I've ever had at this farm to table restaurants right across the street from there was a park where we could go, and Mazzy was able to play in the park, and they even had an outlet so I could plug in my computer and my phone. So, so I think the whole, moral of the story is that, there's a couple of ways you can take something like that. You can see it as a sign that, wow, maybe I made, the the wrong decision there. Or you could take it as a fact that, when you're doing something like this and you're, traveling or doing, you're out there in the world, you have to rely on strangers so much to help you get through things. You don't have the comforts of your own home to kind of, aid you and protect you. So it's a leap to say that I'm going to go out into the world and, I'm going to need all these people to help me get through this. And over the 2 years I've almost been traveling now, I have to admit that, that's been true all the way through. So, I had this opportunity to spend some time in this beautiful little town that I never would have gone to, and I'd hope to go back sometime. And I did write a blog post on that. So, I'll try to remember to do a quick link to it through the podcast. So I just thought that was a good, it was like the perfect way I needed to start my travels, just kind of have some adversity and to be able to, kind of get over some of those things and realize that it's not going to be a cakewalk, but for the most part, I was still doing the right thing, and you kind of always have to kind of learn to kind of go with the flow. So I think that's, very important. So there's some of that. So in terms of now, how would I like this podcast to go? As I'm probably talking way too fast, but I'm kind of hoping, that this thing will be very organic, and if we can get people listening, it'd be great to get feedback on topics and things to talk about. We can definitely talk about how to winterize an old camper, but I much rather talk about some of the other things, some cool places to go, how to be a solo traveler, where to camp for free. Those are some of the things that, I should have probably mentioned above to, some of the new perspectives that I guess I can bring to the discussion. You see a lot of people out there who have, big, $100,000 rigs or $80,000 sprinter vans, I most definitely do not. I think one of the things that I wanted to do was travel simple, travel, with a sense of sustainability and being green. And, so I think there's lots of things there to talk about, and I think if most people who know me would probably, even if I had the money to have an $80,000 sprinter van, I probably wouldn't do it anyway. I have a 27-foot C-Class camper. It's a 1989. So definitely not new, but it's mine, and I've definitely, grown to love her. Her name's Arla. So, so there's lots of different things we can talk about, and the whole thing of working on the road and how to navigate, work and fun and things like that. So, so if you have ideas, definitely I would love to hear them, depending on how you found this, I'm on all the different platforms, all the social media. The easiest way is to go to my blog. That's where the podcast is being housed, and that is under travelingdesigner.co, not .com. Someone has the .com, but they're not using it, but I can't get my hands on it, so it's .co. So you can go there and you can find all, my Twitter account, Facebook, Instagram, or you can just put a comment in if you would like to have some feedback on some things we could talk about. So the hope is to, maybe do another podcast in a couple of weeks. I'm hitting the road. We'll see how things go. And then we can kind of go from there. So I'm a big fan of quotes. I love quotes. And so I figured I would end each episode with a quote. And as I'm recording this, I realized it's John Muir's birthday today. So I thought I would do a quote from him, which says, "In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks," which I think is a really cool quote. So with that, I will say goodbye and happy adventuring, and I will see you next time. To listen to all the episodes and to read my blog, go to www.travelingdesigner.co. That's www.travelingdesigner.co.